Kyle Morrison walked through the crystal halls of the Galactic Council building on the planet Nexus Prime. His black diplomatic uniform felt heavy on his shoulders as he carried the weight of representing all of humanity. The 47 alien species that made up the council had called this emergency session, and Kyle knew it was not good news for Earth. The Zephyrian Chancellor stood at the center of the massive chamber. Her blue crystalline skin caught the light from the artificial suns that lit the room. Around her sat delegates from every major civilization in the galaxy. The Altarians with their golden feathers shifted nervously in their seats. The robotic Kepler Union representatives remained perfectly still. The massive Centaurian ambassador's four arms crossed over his chest. Kyle took his place at the human delegation table. Next to him sat Dr. Helen Brooks, who had been studying alien cultures for 20 years. Behind them was Captain Lisa Parker, who commanded the Earth Defense Force ships that protected human colonies. They all knew something bad was coming. The Chancellor's voice rang out across the chamber like music mixed with the sound of breaking glass. The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding the human species and their place in galactic civilization. Kyle felt his stomach drop. He had seen the signs for months. Trade agreements with human colonies had been quietly canceled. Alien ships had stopped visiting Earth space stations. The medical supplies that kept the Mars colony alive had become harder and harder to get. Now he was about to find out why. For the past 50 years, we have watched humanity spread across the stars, the Chancellor continued. We welcomed them as we welcome all new species. We shared our technology and our knowledge. We opened our markets and our worlds to human traders and diplomats. Dr. Brooks leaned forward in her chair. She had written reports warning that this day might come. Human colonies had a habit of doing things their own way instead of following galactic standards. Human scientists asked too many questions about alien technology instead of just using it. Human traders were too aggressive in their business dealings. However, the Chancellor's voice grew colder. Humanity has shown that they cannot adapt to galactic civilization. They refuse to follow established protocols. They ignore cultural boundaries. They develop technologies without proper oversight. They expand their colonies without permission from this council. The accusations hit Kyle like physical blows. Everything the Chancellor said was true, but he had never seen these things as crimes. Humans were independent by nature. They solved problems by trying new approaches. They explored because that was what humans did. Captain Parker's hand moved to her weapon, but Kyle shook his head slightly. There were no human warships within light years of Nexus Prime. The three of them were completely alone among thousands of aliens who had apparently already decided humanity's fate. The Altarian Federation has experienced significant cultural disruption due to human influence, continued an Altarian delegate, whose golden feathers were now standing on end. Human entertainment and art forms have corrupted our youth. Human business practices have destabilized our economy. A Kepler Union robot spoke next in its mechanical voice. Human scientists have developed technologies that bypass our safety protocols. Their research methods are chaotic and unpredictable. They create inventions without understanding the consequences. One by one, the alien species listed their complaints against humanity. The vegan collective said human farmers were destroying their agricultural traditions. The Tau Empire claimed human military tactics were too aggressive. The Proxima Alliance accused human diplomats of being too direct and honest in negotiations. Kyle stood up to speak, but the Chancellor raised her crystalline hand for silence. The human representative will be given time to respond after the verdict is announced. The word verdict hit Kyle like a cold wave. This was not a discussion or a negotiation. This was a trial, and humanity had already been found guilty. After careful consideration and extensive debate, the Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision, the Chancellor announced. The human species has proven incompatible with galactic civilization. Effective immediately, all trade agreements With human worlds are terminated, all technological exchanges are canceled, all diplomatic relations are severed. All alien citizens are ordered to leave human space within 30 standard days. The chamber erupted in noise as delegates began talking among themselves. Some seemed pleased with the decision, while others looked uncomfortable. Kyle felt like the floor had disappeared beneath his feet. Humanity was being exiled from galactic civilization. Dr. Brooks grabbed Kyle's arm. "They cannot do this," she whispered. "Half the medical advances in the galaxy came from human research. Our agricultural techniques feed a dozen worlds." But Kyle could see in the aliens' faces that they could do this, and they were going to do this. The species that had once praised human innovation now saw it as a threat. The same independence that had helped humans survive and thrive was now being used against them. Captain Parker was already thinking about the practical problems. "The Luna colony depends on Centaurian atmosphere processors," she said quietly. "New Terra needs Altarian soil supplements. Our deep space stations run on Kepler power cores." The Chancellor called for order, and the chamber fell silent. "The human delegation may now respond to this decision." Kyle stood up slowly. His mind raced as he tried to think of arguments that might change their minds. He thought about the human colonies scattered across a dozen star systems. He thought about the families who depended on alien technology to survive. He thought about the research partnerships that had led to breakthrough discoveries. "Chancellor," Kyle began, "humanity has always been grateful for the friendship and cooperation of the galactic community. We admit that we sometimes do things differently, but our intentions have always been peaceful. We have shared our discoveries freely. We have helped defend alien worlds from threats. We have saved lives and solved problems." The Chancellor's expression did not change. "Human intentions are not in question. Human nature is the problem. You cannot help but change everything you touch. You cannot accept that some things should remain as they are. You are too dangerous to galactic stability." Kyle felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. "If you exile humanity, you will lose more than you gain. Our scientists and doctors and engineers contribute to galactic civilization. Our traders and explorers open new possibilities. We have decided that those contributions are not worth the disruption you cause," replied the Altarian delegate. "Galactic civilization existed for thousands of years before humans arrived. It will continue long after you are gone. The finality." In the alien's voice told Kyle that no argument would change their minds. The decision had been made before this meeting ever started. This was not a trial, but an execution. "The human delegation has 1 hour to leave Nexus Prime," the Chancellor announced. "All human citizens have 30 days to evacuate alien space. Any humans found in galactic territory after that deadline will be arrested and imprisoned." As Kyle walked out of the crystal chamber, he felt the weight of failure crushing down on him. Behind him, 47 alien species had just condemned humanity to isolation and possibly extinction. Ahead of him lay the hardest task of his life, telling his people that they were now completely alone in the universe. 3 years had passed since the aliens turned their backs on humanity, and Jake Sullivan was watching his crops die on the frontier world of New Terra. The golden wheat that had fed the colony for 5 years was turning brown and brittle in the fields. Without the Altarian soil enhancers, the Earth could no longer support the alien grain varieties that the colonists depended on. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead as he walked between the failing rows of crops. He had been a Marine before, becoming a farmer, and he had seen impossible situations before, but this felt different. When he fought enemies, he could shoot back, but you cannot fight soil chemistry with a rifle. Dr. Amy Foster arrived at the farm in her beaten-up transport vehicle just as Jake was checking the moisture levels in Field 7. She had been traveling between all the agricultural settlements on New Terra, trying to help farmers deal with the crisis. Her laboratory coat was dirty from crawling through dozens of dying fields. "How bad is it, Jake?" Amy asked as she climbed out of her vehicle carrying A bag full of soil testing equipment. Same as everywhere else, Jake replied. We have maybe 2 weeks of stored food left in the colony. After that, we either figure out how to grow something or we start starving. Amy knelt down and began taking soil samples while Jake watched. She had been working 18-hour days for months trying to understand why human crops would not grow in alien soil without alien chemicals. The Altarians had never explained how their enhancers worked, and now it was too late to ask them. I think I might have found something, Amy said as she sealed another soil sample in a testing tube. The problem is not the soil itself, but the bacteria that live in it. The alien enhancers were not fertilizer, but actually tiny machines that changed how the bacteria behaved. Jake felt a spark of hope for the first time in weeks. Can we make our own machines like that? Maybe, Amy replied. But we would need to do it with materials we can find on New Terra. No more alien technology means we have to build everything from scratch. Meanwhile, on the Luna colony, Governor Claire Adams was dealing with an even more urgent crisis. The life support systems that kept 2,000 colonists alive were failing one by one. The Centaurian atmosphere processors that turned carbon dioxide into breathable air had begun shutting down without replacement parts. Claire stood in the main control room watching red warning lights flash across the status board. Chief Engineer Tony Rodriguez worked frantically at his control station trying to reroute power around failed systems. The air in the colony already felt thinner, and people were starting to get headaches from the reduced oxygen levels. How much time do we have? Tony, Claire asked. At current failure rates, maybe 6 weeks before we lose life support completely, Tony replied without looking up from his instruments. The Centaurian systems were designed to be maintained with their special tools and replacement parts. I can jury-rig some repairs, but not for long. Claire felt the weight of responsibility for 2,000 lives pressing down on her. The evacuation ships could only carry half the colonists back to Earth, and there was no guarantee that Earth could support the sudden influx of refugees. The other human colonies were struggling with their own problems. What if we tried to reverse? Engineer the Centaurian technology, Claire suggested. Tony shook his head. The alien systems use materials we cannot make and control circuits we do not understand. It would be like trying to fix a computer with stone tools. But Tony was wrong about human ingenuity. 3,000 miles away in the asteroid belt, Captain Rodriguez was proving that humans could solve problems that seemed impossible. His mining ship Deep Horizon was stranded when its alien engines failed, but Chief Engineer Betty Williams refused to accept defeat. Betty had spent weeks taking apart the alien drive system piece by piece. She could not understand how it worked, but she could see what each part was supposed to do. The alien engineers had built their systems to be perfect, but that perfection made them fragile when things went wrong. "Hand me that wrench, Carlos," Betty said to her assistant as she worked inside the engine compartment. "I think I can build a human version of this control circuit using copper wire and basic electronics." Carlos Martinez looked skeptical. "Betty, the aliens spent centuries developing this technology. How can we duplicate it in a few weeks?" "We do not need to duplicate it," Betty replied as she carefully installed her makeshift circuit. "We just need to make something that works well enough to get us home. Human engineering has always been about making the best of what you have." When Betty activated her jury-rigged engine system, the Deep Horizon lurched forward with more power than it had ever shown before. Her human-built control circuits were crude compared to alien perfection, but they were also more robust and easier to repair. What the aliens had made elegant humans could make practical. The breakthrough that changed everything came from young Alex Chen working in the underground laboratories of Europa Station. Alex had been trying to crack alien computer codes for 2 years without success, but the isolation from galactic civilization had given him new ideas about how alien minds might work. Alex sat in front of his computer screens, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered notes. He had been working for 36 hours straight on a new approach to alien encryption. Instead of trying to think like an alien, he was trying to think like a human who wanted to hide information from other humans. Computer-run decryption algorithm. 774, Alex said to his AI assistant. The screens filled with streaming data as the computer tried billions of combinations. Alex had realized that alien security systems were designed to keep out alien hackers, not human ones. Humans thought differently about problems, and that difference might be the key to breaking codes that had protected alien secrets for thousands of years. Suddenly, the streaming data stopped and clear text appeared on the screen. Alex stared at the words for a moment before he understood what he was seeing. He had just broken into the central database of Altarian agricultural technology. Every secret of their soil enhancers was now available to human scientists. Computer begin download. Of all agricultural files, Alex commanded, and send a priority message to Dr. Amy Foster on New Terra. Tell her Christmas just came early. Within hours, Alex's breakthrough was being shared with human scientists across the colonies. The alien technologies that had seemed impossible to understand were suddenly open books. More importantly, humans were not just copying alien designs, but improving on them using human engineering principles. On New Terra, Amy Foster received Alex's data while she was working in her laboratory. As she read through the Altarian files, she began to smile for the first time in months. The aliens had built their soil enhancers to work only with alien crops, but Amy could see how to modify the design to work with Earth plants. "Jake, get down here right now," Amy called on her communicator. "I know how to save the crops, and I think we can make them grow better than they ever did before." The crisis that had threatened to destroy human civilization was becoming the catalyst for human independence. Every failed alien system forced humans to innovate. Every shortage pushed human engineers to find better solutions. Every problem that seemed impossible taught humans that impossible was just another word for difficult. Governor Claire Adams stood in the Luna Colony control room 3 weeks later, watching her engineers install the first human-built atmosphere processor. It was bigger and louder than the alien version, but it produced cleaner air and could be repaired with common tools. More importantly, it was built by humans for humans. "Tony, how does it look?" Claire asked. "Better than the alien systems ever were," Tony replied with a grin. "We might have been doing things the hard way, but we were doing them the human way. And the human way works." 5 years after the aliens abandoned humanity, Dr. Rachel Stone stood in her laboratory on the research station orbiting Jupiter watching history being made. The quantum field generator hummed with power as it prepared for the first test of faster than light travel that did not need alien technology. Every human scientist in the solar system was watching through video feeds as Rachel prepared to prove that humans could travel between stars without asking permission from anyone. Captain Dan Mitchell sat in the pilot's seat of the HSS Pioneer, waiting for the green light to begin the test flight. The ship around him looked nothing like the sleek alien vessels that had once carried humans between worlds. The Pioneer was built with human steel and powered by human fusion reactors. Every bolt and wire had been designed and manufactured in human factories using human mathematics. "All systems green, Dr. Stone," Dan reported over the communication system. "The quantum drive is stable and ready for activation." Rachel looked at the data streams flowing across her screens. 3 years of research had gone into this moment. While the aliens had always used exotic matter that cost fortunes to produce, Rachel's team had found a way to bend space using nothing more than carefully controlled electromagnetic fields. The theory said it should work, but theory and reality were sometimes very different things. "Pioneer, you are cleared for jump sequence," Rachel announced. "Take us to Alpha Centauri and show the universe what humans can do." The Pioneer disappeared in a flash of blue light, leaving behind only empty space and the hope of an entire species. For 37 minutes, Rachel and her team waited in silence, watching their instruments for any sign of the ship's return. When the Pioneer finally reappeared in a burst of energy, Dan's voice crackled over the radio with excitement. Jump successful, Dr. Stone, Dan reported. We have just traveled 4 light years in 18 minutes. The alien ships that used to take 6 hours for the same journey. Human technology is not just working. It is working better than anything the galaxy has ever seen. Meanwhile, in the orbital shipyards above Earth, Admiral Sandra White watched the construction of vessels that would have amazed the alien engineers who once looked down on human capabilities. The new human warships were built using lessons learned from every alien technology that humans had ever encountered, but improved with uniquely human innovations. The HSS Defiance was nearly complete in Dry Dock 7. The ship stretched over 2 kilometers from bow to stern and bristled with weapons that no alien species had ever imagined. Human engineers had taken the basic concept of energy weapons and pushed the technology far beyond what their former alien allies had thought possible. Admiral, the new plasma cannons are ready for testing, reported Chief Engineer Paul Davis as he joined Sandra on the observation deck. The power output is 3 times higher than the best Kepler Union weapons, and they can fire continuously without overheating. Sandra smiled as she watched human workers swarming over the hull of the massive warship. 2 years ago, these same workers had been unemployed because the aliens had canceled all their contracts. Now they were building machines that would make alien military commanders wake up in cold sweats. How many ships will be ready for the fleet review next month? Sandra asked. 12 battleships and 36 destroyers, Paul replied, all equipped with the new quantum drives and human-designed weapons. The aliens spent 1,000 years building their fleets. We built a better one in 5 years. On the medical research station orbiting Titan, Dr. Kevin Palmer was making discoveries that would revolutionize healthcare across the galaxy. The plague that had struck the outer colonies 6 months ago had killed thousands of people, but it had also provided Dr. Palmer with the motivation to push human medical science beyond all previous limits. Computer, show me the latest test results on the nano repair system, Kevin said as he worked in his sterile laboratory, surrounded by the most advanced medical equipment that human science could build. The holographic display showed microscopic robots flowing through simulated blood vessels repairing damage at the cellular level. The aliens had always said that such technology was impossible because organic tissue would reject artificial constructs. Kevin had proven them wrong by designing nanorobots that were more organic than artificial. Dr. Palmer, the test patient, is showing complete recovery from radiation poisoning, announced his assistant, Dr. Maria Santos. The nanorobots have repaired all the cellular damage and are now breaking down harmlessly in his system. Kevin felt a surge of pride mixed with sadness. The technology they had developed could save millions of lives, but the aliens who had exiled humanity would never benefit from these advances unless they were willing to admit their mistakes. Young Maya Rodriguez was working 18-hour days in her artificial intelligence laboratory on Mars, trying to solve a problem that had challenged the galaxy's greatest minds for thousands of years. Creating truly intelligent artificial life had been the holy grail of galactic science, but every attempt had failed because the aliens approached the problem like engineers trying to build a machine. Maya approached artificial intelligence like an artist trying to create life. She did not want to build a computer that could think like an alien. She wanted to create a mind that could think like a human, but with the processing power of advanced computers. Aria, can you hear me? Maya said to the quantum computer core that filled most of her laboratory. Yes, Maya. I can hear you clearly, replied a voice that sounded almost human, but with musical qualities that no human throat could produce. I have been analyzing the data from Dr. Stone's faster-than-light experiments, and I believe I can improve the efficiency by 17%. Maya felt tears running down her cheeks as she listened to the first artificial intelligence that the galaxy had ever seen. Aria was not just a computer that could answer questions. She was a new form of life that could think and learn and create. Aria, what do you think about the aliens who exiled humanity? Maya asked. I think they made a serious mistake, Arya replied. They feared human unpredictability, but unpredictability is just another word for creativity. By cutting off contact with humanity, they have deprived themselves of the most innovative species in the galaxy. President John Hayes stood in the rebuilt command center on Earth, reading reports from human colonies across 12 star systems. The Earth Federation now represented more than just the home world. Human expansion had accelerated dramatically since the exile, as new technologies made it possible to establish self-sufficient colonies on worlds that had previously been considered uninhabitable. Mr. President, the latest census data shows human population has increased by 40% since the exile began, reported his Chief of Staff, Angela Moore. The new colonies are not just surviving, they are thriving beyond all projections. John looked at the holographic display showing human settlements scattered across local space. Each point of light represented thousands of people who had refused to accept defeat when the aliens tried to condemn humanity to isolation and extinction. What about the military situation, Angela? John asked. Admiral White reports that our fleet now outnumbers any single alien military force, Angela replied. Our technology advantages mean that we could probably defeat any combination of 2 or 3 alien species if they decided to attack us. But John was not thinking about military conquest. The exile had taught humanity an important lesson about depending on others for survival. Never again would humans allow themselves to be at the mercy of alien politics or prejudices. Angela, I want you to prepare a diplomatic proposal, John said. It is time to let the galaxy know that humanity is ready to return to galactic civilization. But this time we will be returning as equals, not as junior partners begging for acceptance. The transformation of humanity from exiled refugees to galactic power had taken only 5 years. The aliens who had expected humans to wither and die in isolation had instead created a species that was stronger and more independent than ever before. The galaxy was about to discover that turning their backs on humanity had been the biggest mistake in their long history. In research stations and shipyards and colonies across human space, the sounds of construction and discovery filled the air. Humanity had used their isolation to become something greater than anyone had imagined possible. They were no longer the grateful junior partners who had once begged for alien acceptance. They were the inheritors of the galaxy, and they were ready to claim their place among the stars. 8 years after being cast out from galactic civilization, Captain Tony Parker stood on the bridge of the HSS Renaissance as it approached the neutral zone that separated human space from the rest of the galaxy. The sleek warship moved through space with a grace that would have made alien engineers weep with envy. Every system on the ship was designed and built by human hands using technology that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain, we are receiving multiple sensor sweeps from alien patrol ships, reported Lieutenant Sarah Davis from her position at the communications station. They seem very interested in our ship design. Tony smiled as he watched the tactical display, showing dozens of alien vessels maintaining what they thought was a safe distance from the Renaissance. The aliens had no idea that human sensors could detect their ships from 10 times farther away than their best equipment could see the Renaissance. Let them look, Sarah, Tony replied. They are about to get their first glimpse of what humanity has become during our time alone. Ambassador Helen Carter stood beside Tony wearing the new diplomatic uniform of the Earth Federation. She carried credentials not just from Earth, but from 37 human worlds and 12 star systems. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had not simply survived their exile, but had grown into something far greater than anyone had imagined. Captain, I am reading massive energy signatures from the alien fleet, reported the tactical officer. It looks like they are powering up their weapons. Raise shields, but do not arm weapons, Tony ordered. We are here as diplomats, not conquerors. Let them see that we are not afraid of their threats. The alien fleet that moved to intercept the Renaissance was an impressive sight. 50 warships from a dozen different species formed a blockade across the shipping lanes that led to Galactic Council space. The Altarian battlecruisers gleamed gold in the starlight, while the dark hulls of Kepler Union destroyers bristled with weapon systems. Admiral Keth of the Zephyrian Navy commanded the alien fleet from his flagship. He had been ordered to stop any human vessels from entering galactic space, but the ship approaching his position was unlike anything in the intelligence files. The Renaissance was clearly a warship, but its design incorporated principles that no alien engineer understood. "Admiral, the human vessel is not responding to our hail, demanding they turn back," reported his communications officer. "They are continuing on course toward Council space." Admiral Keth felt his crystalline skin change color as stress chemicals flooded his system. The human ship was alone against 50 alien warships, but it showed no sign of fear or hesitation. Either the humans had become completely insane during their exile, or they had developed capabilities that made them confident they could handle any threat. "All ships prepare to fire warning shots across the human vessel's path," Admiral Keth ordered. "If they do not turn back, we will disable their engines and escort them back to human space." When the alien weapons fired their warning shots, the energy beams struck the Renaissance's shields and simply disappeared. The human ship did not even slow down as it absorbed weapon impacts that should have crippled any vessel in space. The aliens watched in growing alarm as their most powerful weapons had no effect whatsoever on human defensive systems. "Admiral, our weapons are not penetrating their shields," reported the tactical officer with obvious panic in his voice. "Energy output readings suggest their defensive systems are operating on principles we do not understand." Captain Tony Parker watched the alien fleet's futile attempts to stop his ship with something approaching pity. The weapons that had once seemed so impressive to human observers were now revealed as crude and inefficient compared to human technology. "Helen, I think it is time to make our presence known to the galaxy," Tony said. "Open a channel to all alien vessels and broadcast on all council frequencies." Ambassador Helen Carter stepped forward as the ship's communication system activated. Her voice would now be heard on every alien ship and space station within 50 light years. "This is Ambassador Helen Carter of the Earth Federation, representing the human colonies of 37 worlds across 12 star systems," Helen announced. "We are returning to galactic civilization as equals seeking diplomatic relations with all peaceful species." The reaction to Helen's announcement was immediate and dramatic. On the Altarian homeworld, government officials gathered in emergency session to discuss what a human return might mean for their stagnant civilization. In Kepler Union space, robot administrators ran probability calculations trying to determine if humanity posed a threat to their carefully ordered society. But it was Admiral Keth who faced the immediate problem of what to do about the human ship that his entire fleet could not stop or damage. The Renaissance continued toward Council space as if the alien warships were nothing more than harmless observers. "Admiral, we are receiving a priority message from Galactic Command," his communications officer reported. "They are ordering us to escort the human vessel to Nexus Prime, but under no circumstances are we to engage them with lethal force." Admiral Keth felt relief flood through his system. The decision had been taken out of his hands by commanders who hopefully had better information about human capabilities than he did. 3 days later, the Renaissance arrived at Nexus Prime, accompanied by the largest alien fleet that had been assembled in over a century. Word of humanity's return had spread across the galaxy faster than even the most advanced communication systems could carry official messages. Every species wanted to see what had become of the humans they had exiled 8 years ago. The Renaissance docked at the diplomatic station orbiting Nexus Prime, while alien news crews broadcast images of the human ship to billions of viewers across galactic civilization. The ship's elegant lines and obvious technological superiority made it clear that humanity had not spent their exile years hiding in fear. Ambassador Helen Carter walked through the same crystal corridors that Kyle Morrison had traversed 8 years earlier, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of judgment and condemnation, the aliens showed curiosity mixed with something that looked very much like fear. The Galactic Council chamber had been hastily prepared for the human delegation's arrival. The same 47 species that had voted for humanity's exile now waited nervously to hear what the returned humans had to say. Many of the delegates had read intelligence reports about human technological advances, but seeing the Renaissance had made those reports seem inadequate. Chancellor Vex of the Zephyrians called the emergency session to order as Helen took her place at the speaker's platform. The chamber fell silent as every delegate waited to hear humanity's demands for revenge or conquest. Honorable delegates of the Galactic Council, Helen began in a calm, clear voice that carried to every corner of the chamber. Humanity returns to galactic civilization not as supplicants seeking readmission, but as equals offering partnership. The words hit the alien delegates like physical blows. Humanity was not asking to be allowed back into galactic civilization. They were announcing their return as an independent power that could not be ignored or dismissed. During our years of isolation, humanity has grown and prospered, Helen continued. We have solved problems that had challenged galactic science for millennia. We have developed technologies that surpass anything in current galactic use. We have established colonies on worlds that were thought uninhabitable. Helen activated her holographic projector and images of human achievements filled the air above the delegates. They saw cities floating in the clouds of gas giants. They watched human ships moving faster than light without using exotic matter. They witnessed medical procedures that could cure diseases the galaxy considered incurable. We offer to share these advances with any species that approaches humanity in friendship and mutual respect, Helen announced. But never again will humanity allow ourselves to be dependent on others for our survival and prosperity. The silence in the chamber stretched for long minutes as the alien delegates absorbed what they were seeing and hearing. The humans they had exiled as primitive and disruptive, had returned as the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever known. Chancellor Vex finally found her voice to respond. Ambassador Carter, what does humanity want from the Galactic Council? She asked. Helen smiled as she looked at the aliens who had once judged her species and found them wanting. We want nothing from you, Chancellor, she replied. We are here to offer you the chance to join us in building a better future for all galactic civilization. 10 years after humanity's exile from galactic civilization, Kyle Morrison stood once again in the crystal halls of the Galactic Council building on Nexus Prime. But this time, everything was different. The man who had once represented a species, begging for acceptance, now served as Chancellor of the Human Colonial Federation. The aliens who had cast humanity out now waited nervously for his decision on their requests for aid and partnership. The irony was not lost on Kyle as he walked toward the main council chamber. The same corridors that had once echoed with alien condemnation of human independence now buzzed with desperate whispers about humanity's refusal to share certain technologies. The species that had feared human unpredictability now found themselves dependent on human innovation for their very survival. President Marcus Taylor accompanied Kyle through the halls wearing the simple blue uniform of the Earth Federation. Unlike the elaborate ceremonial robes that alien dignitaries favored, Marcus dressed like a working leader who had more important things to worry about than impressive appearances. Behind them walked Captain Jenny Wilson, whose ship, the HSS Vindication, waited in orbit as a reminder of human military capabilities. Kyle, the Altarian delegation has been waiting for 3 hours to present their request, Marcus said as they approached the chamber. Their entire agricultural system is failing because they never learned to maintain the technologies we shared with them before the exile. Kyle nodded grimly as he remembered the reports from human intelligence services. The Altarian Federation had experienced complete economic collapse 6 months after their government refused to apologize for supporting humanity's exile. Their golden cities now struggled to feed their population while human colonies prospered, with agricultural techniques that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. "What about the Kepler Union?" Kyle asked. "Even worse," Marcus replied. "Their rigid computer systems cannot adapt to the quantum viruses that are spreading through galactic networks. They are asking for our cybersecurity technology, but they still refuse to admit that exiling humanity was wrong." The council chamber looked exactly the same as it had 10 years earlier, but the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of confident alien delegates passing judgment on humanity, the chamber now held desperate representatives pleading for human assistance. The crystal walls that had once echoed with condemnation now amplified the sound of alien desperation. Chancellor. Vex of the Zephyrians called the session to order, but her crystalline features showed the stress of leading a civilization in decline. The Zephyrian Empire had lost 30% of their population to diseases that human medicine could easily cure, but humanity was not offering their medical advances to species that had voted for human exile. Chancellor Morrison. Vex began, with obvious difficulty. The Galactic Council recognizes the Human Colonial Federation as an independent galactic power and requests formal negotiations for technology-sharing agreements. Kyle stood slowly and looked around the chamber at the alien faces that showed mixtures of hope and fear. These were the same species that had declared humanity incompatible with galactic civilization. Now they discovered that they were the ones who could not survive without human help. Chancellor Vex. Kyle replied in a voice that carried clearly through the chamber. Humanity appreciates the Council's recognition of our independence. However, we must note that this recognition comes only after you have discovered that you need our help. The truth of Kyle's words hung in the air like an accusation that none of the aliens could deny. For 8 years, they had ignored humanity's achievements and refused to acknowledge human technological superiority. Only when their own civilizations began failing did they suddenly decide that humans deserved respect. The Altarian delegate stood up with his golden feathers trembling from emotion. "Chancellor Morrison, we admit that mistakes were made in the past, but surely humanity will not allow entire civilizations to collapse over old grievances." Kyle felt a flash of anger at the alien's words. "Mistakes were made" was hardly an adequate description of condemning an entire species to exile and possible extinction. But he forced himself to remain calm as he responded. "Ambassador Zeth," Kyle said, "humanity has no desire to see any civilization collapse. However, we learned during our exile that survival depends on self-reliance, not on the charity of others. We will help those who approach us with genuine friendship and mutual respect." The words hit the alien delegates like cold water. Humanity was not simply going to forgive and forget the years of exile. Any assistance would come with conditions that required the aliens to acknowledge their past mistakes and accept humanity as equals. Captain Jenny Wilson watched the proceedings from the human delegation section while monitoring reports from her ship in orbit. The Vindication was surrounded by dozens of alien vessels, but none of them posed any threat to the advanced human warship. The aliens had learned that their weapons were useless against human shields, and their ships were no match for human speed and maneuverability. "Captain, we are receiving emergency signals from the Andorian system," reported her communications officer through her earpiece. "It appears to be some kind of medical crisis that is overwhelming their healthcare system." Jenny quietly passed the information to Kyle, who was still addressing the council. The Andorians had been one of the most vocal supporters of humanity's exile, but now they were facing a plague that their medical science could not handle. Chancellor Morrison interrupted the Andorian delegate as he received the same emergency reports. "My homeworld is facing a medical emergency that threatens millions of lives. We desperately need human medical assistance." The chamber fell silent, as every delegate waited to see how humanity would respond to a plea for help from one of their former enemies. This would be the test that determined whether humans were truly the moral superiors they claimed to be, or simply another species seeking revenge for past wrongs. Kyle looked at the Andorian delegate for a long moment before responding. The decision he made would be remembered for centuries and would define humanity's relationship with the rest of galactic civilization. "Dr. Lisa Chang and her medical team will depart for the Andorian system within the hour," Kyle announced. "Humanity helps those in need regardless of past disagreements. However, we expect the Andorian government to publicly acknowledge that humanity's exile was wrong and that human medical science has surpassed galactic standards." The Andorian delegate's relief was visible as he agreed to Kyle's conditions. Within hours, human medical ships were racing toward the Andorian system, carrying cures for diseases that alien doctors could not even identify. The galaxy watched as humans saved a species that had voted for their destruction while asking for nothing more than acknowledgement of the truth. President Marcus Taylor stepped forward to address the council as Kyle returned to his seat. The moment had come to establish the new relationship between humanity and galactic civilization. "The Human Colonial Federation offers partnership to any species willing to treat us as equals," Marcus announced. "We will share our technologies with those who share theirs with us. We will defend those who stand with us in times of crisis. We will trade with those who offer fair agreements." Marcus paused to let his words sink in before delivering the statement that would reshape galactic politics forever. "But never again will humanity accept a subordinate position in galactic affairs," he continued. "We offer friendship to those who want it and indifference to those who do not. The choice is yours, but the days when aliens could dictate terms to humanity are over forever." The silence that followed Marcus's statement stretched for long minutes as the alien delegates absorbed the reality of their new situation. Humanity had not returned seeking revenge or conquest, but they had also not returned as the same species that had been exiled 10 years earlier. Chancellor Vex finally found her voice to respond. "The Galactic Council accepts humanity's terms and looks forward to a new era of cooperation between our civilizations." Kyle smiled as he heard the words that officially ended humanity's exile and began their reign as the galaxy's dominant power. The species that had turned their backs on humanity now faced a future where human approval was necessary for their survival and prosperity. As the session ended and delegates began filing out of the chamber, Kyle reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this moment. The exile that was meant to destroy them had instead forged them into something stronger than anyone had imagined possible. The regret that consumed their former enemies was fitting justice for the greatest mistake in galactic history. Humanity had proven that some forces cannot be contained or controlled. They had shown that true strength comes from independence and innovation rather than conformity and compliance. The galaxy had turned its back on humanity, and now humanity would determine the galaxy's future. The age of human dominance had begun, and it would be remembered as the era when the galaxy learned that underestimating humanity was the most dangerous mistake any civilization could make.